I gave my daughter a house for her wedding, a real home, nestled in a quiet corner of the Seattle suburbs. Newly renovated, every detail handpicked. The soft marble countertops, warm oak floors, windows that opened to a garden she once dreamed of as a child. It wasn't just a gift. It was a wish. A wish that her marriage would begin with peace, dignity, and everything I never had when I was her age. Elena had always been the careful one. Thoughtful, determined, fiercely kind. So when she brought Jacob Collins home for the first time, we watched him closely. He was quiet, polite, almost too polite, the kind of man who answered questions with "yes, ma'am," and looked at the floor more than he looked at her. My husband, Jonathan, said the boy was respectful. I said he was rehearsed. Still, Elena loved him, deeply, the kind of love that blinds a woman into thinking patience can fix anything. Jacob came from a rural town 3 hours out. His family, humble farm folk, not poor, just unaccustomed to what Elena had. No house, no car, and when we offered to cover part of the wedding, they didn't protest. They vanished. Not once did they reach out to contribute or offer to help plan. But Elena defended them. They're shy. They don't want to intrude, so we didn't push. We renovated the house ourselves. Jonathan oversaw every nail, every inch of tile. The day the final chandelier was hung, he was so proud he called me out to the front yard just to admire how the sunlight hit the windows. He said, "She's going to be safe here." But 1 week before the wedding, I got a call from the renovation crew. "There's a moving truck in the driveway," they said. "A family unloading boxes." I froze. Jonathan drove over immediately. And when he called me back, his voice was low, cold, clipped. "They're here, Martha. Jacob's family, his parents, his sister, her husband. They've moved in." I stared at the kitchen counter, at the envelope that held the deed to that house with my daughter's name on it, and suddenly all that warmth I had felt turned to stone. By the time I got there, the front gate was wide open, the moving truck still parked halfway across the driveway like it owned the place. Boxes were stacked by the porch, mismatched, taped up in a rush, scribbled with words like Robert's Tools and Melissa's Pantry. As I stepped inside, I could hear laughter, loud, jarring, as if someone had mistaken this for a family reunion, and then I saw them. Linda Collins was standing in the entryway, hand on hip, pointing toward the chandelier. "Bit much, don't." "You think?" she said. "Looks like something out of a casino lobby. We're simple folks. We don't need all this show-off stuff." Behind her, Robert had already made himself comfortable on the living room couch, shoes kicked off, remote in hand. He didn't even glance at us. And Melissa, Jacob's older sister, was leading her husband down the hall like a real estate agent showing off a new listing. Elena stood frozen near the stairs, eyes darting between them. Her voice was small when she said, "Hi, Mrs. Collins. Mr. Collins, I wasn't expecting you yet." Linda turned to her and smiled, the kind of smile that never touches the eyes. "Oh, sweetie, we just thought we'd come early to help you settle in. I mean, once the wedding's over, this'll be our second home, right? No use wasting time." I opened my mouth, but before I could say a word, Linda brushed right past me, her shoes clicking across the hardwood floors as she moved deeper into the house. "What's with that gate, by the way?" She tossed back over her shoulder. "Looks like you're guarding Fort Knox. Not very welcoming for neighbors, is it?" Elena tried to laugh it off. "It's just for security," Linda snorted. "Security from what? We're not in the Bronx." The moment she laid eyes on the master bedroom, she gasped, not in awe, but in ownership. "This one," she said, spinning to face Melissa. "We'll take this one. It's got the sunlight and the attached bathroom. Perfect for us." Elena blinked. "Sorry. What?" Linda waved a hand. "Don't be silly. You and Jacob are young. You don't need all this space. Let us be comfortable. Just until you settle into your rhythm." I turned to Jacob, expecting him to speak, to say something, anything. Instead, he gave that sheepish, awkward half-smile I'd started to hate. "They just speak loudly," he muttered. They don't mean any harm. And in that moment, I realized something chilling. This wasn't an early visit. This was a takeover. By the next morning, they were fully settled in. The living room was unrecognizable, sofas pushed aside, the coffee table relocated without asking. Melissa had dragged a plastic bin filled with her toddler's toys into the den and declared it a play space. I found Robert halfway up a ladder in the dining room, removing one of the pendant lights Jonathan had picked out months ago. "Too bright," he said, without so much as a glance in my direction. "Gives me a headache. We'll swap it with something softer. Maybe one of those paper ones." In the kitchen, Linda opened every cabinet, inspected each shelf like a health inspector on a mission. Stainless steel? Tacky. Granite would have been classier, but I guess city girls don't know much about durability. I bit my tongue, but then she lit a cigarette, inside the house. I turned, stunned, as the sharp smell filled the air. Elena rushed over, voice tight but polite. "Mrs. Collins, I'm sorry, but this is a non-smoking house." Linda raised an eyebrow. "Well, I smoke, so I guess it's a compromise." I watched Elena's hand tremble at her side. Upstairs, Melissa was giving a full tour to her husband. "Luca can take this room," she said, pointing to one of the guest bedrooms. "He'll need space for toys and books. It's closer to the bathroom anyway." Robert joined in, voice loud and final. "Yeah, let's get the paperwork started. We'll put this house in Luca's name. Safer that way. Easier for school enrollment when he starts kindergarten here." Elena's face drained. "Excuse me? It's all in the family, right?" Robert added with a shrug. "It's not like anyone's selling the place, just smart planning." This time, Elena didn't hold back. "No, this house isn't a free-for-all. It was a wedding gift, from my parents to me." Jacob stepped in, lips thin, arms crossed. "You don't have to be so hostile." She blinked. "Hostile?" He raised his voice. "They're trying to help, and you're acting like some spoiled princess. Ungrateful." That was the moment. Jonathan stood up from the corner, eyes narrowed, and when he looked at me, silent, stone-faced, I knew this wasn't just a family visit. This was war. Dinner that night was supposed to be quiet, peaceful. Elena had ordered in from her favorite Thai place, hoping maybe, just maybe, it would diffuse the tension brewing in every corner of the house. But the moment the food hit the table, Linda scoffed, lifting the takeout container like it offended her. "You ordered out?" she said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "What kind of wife doesn't cook for her? Family? You'll be part of us soon, Elena. You need to step up." Elena blinked. "It's been a long day. I thought this would be easier for everyone." Linda crossed her arms. "That's not how we do things. In this family, women take care of the home. You think you're gonna just sit there while the rest of us starve?" Robert chimed in without even lifting his eyes from the plate. "She's acting like the house belongs to her." Elena's fork hit the table. "It does." He looked up slowly. "No, sweetheart, this house belongs to my son. And by extension, to us." The room froze. Jonathan's chair creaked. I could feel the air shift, heavy like a thunderstorm waiting to break. Elena stood slowly, shoulders squared. "Then take your son," she said, voice low, trembling but sharp, "and leave." Jacob's head snapped up. "What?" "You heard me," she said. "You want to question who this house belongs to? Get out." Jacob stood. "You're throwing a tantrum again, like always." Then he did something I will never forget. He reached out and grabbed her wrist. "Elena." Snap. It wasn't a sound. It was a moment, a shift, a final straw breaking. Jonathan shot up like a storm rising, fist clenched before anyone could stop him, and then, crack. His fist met Robert's jaw with a sound that echoed down the hallway. Robert staggered backward, slamming into the sideboard, a bowl crashing to the floor. Linda shrieked, "You maniac!" "Touch her again," Jonathan growled, "and I swear I'll bury you in the garden I planted for her." Chaos erupted. Melissa screamed, grabbing her purse. Her husband tried to drag Robert up from the floor. Elena stood frozen. Jacob moved toward her again, but this time I was faster. I stepped between them, eyes locked. "Get your things," I said. "All of you, now!" "No one's going anywhere," Robert barked, holding his jaw. "Oh, I think you are," I snapped. And then, like some poetic justice, Melissa tripped over one of the toy bins she left earlier. She tumbled backward, arms flailing, landing with a thud on the first few steps of the staircase. The room went still, then Jacob broke the silence. "You're going to regret this." Elena didn't flinch. "No, I've been regretting staying." "Quiet." We didn't let them speak another word. We pushed open the front door and we watched them walk out, humiliated, furious, and exactly where they belonged. Outside. 3 days after we kicked them out, Elena called me from work. Her voice was flat, detached, like she'd seen a ghost. "He emailed me," she said. "Jacob, he sent an invoice." I paused. "A what?" "An actual invoice," she repeated, almost laughing. "Line item, breakdown, full total." I told her to forward it. When I opened the attachment, I nearly dropped my phone. Subject: Relationship reimbursements amount due, 3/212/64. It was color-coded, professionally formatted, bullet points and all. Starbucks, 14 visits, $89.60 Valentine's Day flowers, 20 Uber rides, 3, $48.75 dinner at the Oyster House, $114.50 split 50-50. Birthday gift card, 200 miscellaneous snacks and drinks, $72.94 time lost. Priceless, but I'll waive it. At the bottom, bolded: "Let's handle this like adults. Kindly transfer to my account by Friday." I saw red. By noon, I was waiting in the lobby of Elena's office tower with a checkbook in hand. I asked for her manager, asked if Jacob still worked 2 floors above. He did. Perfect. Moments later, the elevator dinged and there he was, Jacob, flanked by his parents acting like they were here to collect a court settlement. Linda was already posturing. "We're just here to get what's fair." I stepped forward, calm as stone. "You want what's fair?" I pulled out my checkbook, wrote exactly $3,212.64 with a flourish, and before Jacob could reach for it, I flicked it to the floor. It landed between his feet like a slap. "There," I said. "Paid in full." He bent down, snatched it up, blinking fast like he'd won something. Until I kept talking. "Now let's talk about what you owe." He froze. "Let's start with the $500 I brought your father when he had that scare at County Hospital," I said. "Or the iPhone Elena bought you last Christmas, $200 before tax. Or maybe the dinner she paid for, every single one except the fast food on your birthday." The lobby had gone silent. Every passing coworker slowed down to listen. Linda's mouth opened, but someone in the back laughed. "He invoiced her for flowers? Wait, he split dinner and still invoiced her half?" Another voice joined in. "This man's not a boyfriend, he's a bad accountant." Jacob's face turned beet red, and for the first time, he didn't say a word. Just when we thought it was over, the internet lit up. An anonymous social media account, brand new, no followers, began posting blurred photos of Elena. Cropped screenshots from dates, distorted videos, and captions dripping with venom. Real-life gold digger exposed. Used her ex like an ATM, then dumped him when someone richer came along. Fake career woman, bought her own ring just to trap him. It was calculated, cruel, and every word, every frame, came from moments Jacob had access to. Private photos, re-edited, innocent clips, stripped of context. Elena didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She forwarded everything to our family lawyer. By noon, we had filed a cyber harassment report and sent a cease and desist to the email traced back to the account. It didn't take long to confirm. The IP was Jacob's. He didn't even try to hide it. I watched Elena read the legal document before signing, her hands steady. "He's not heartbroken," she said quietly. "He's not sad. He's angry that—" I stopped playing along. She looked up, eyes cold. "He's not in love with me. He's obsessed with control." And that's when I knew. Elena sitting in front of me wasn't a girl putting her life back together. She was a woman reclaiming it. The letter came in a plain white envelope. No return address. Just her name, Elena Blake, scrawled in Jacob's handwriting. She opened it slowly, knowing exactly who it was from, before reading a single word. It was 3 pages long. No punctuation. In some places. Too much in others. A mess of ink, desperation, and carefully crafted guilt. You were the only light in my life. I know I made mistakes, but I was scared. Everyone always leaves me. You said you wouldn't. If you go for good, I don't know what I'll do. It wasn't an apology. It was a trap disguised as remorse. By the time she reached the final line, I'm nothing without you. Her jaw had tightened. She didn't cry. She just stood, walked to her room, and came out 10 minutes later with the letter pressed into a plastic evidence sleeve. I'm done, she said. This ends today. That afternoon, we drove straight to the courthouse. Inside the waiting area, she sat silently, fingers gripping the manila folder in her lap. Every breath she took was measured, controlled. But I could see it in the way her foot tapped, the tension rising from the soles of her shoes to the corners of her clenched jaw. Why does it still hurt? She whispered. I didn't answer right away. Just watched the dull fluorescent light flicker above her head like it couldn't decide whether to stay on or give out. Then I said, because healing is work, and work is hard. But you're doing it right. She turned to me, and for the first time in weeks, her eyes weren't just angry. They weren't scared. They were clear. 1 hour later, the temporary restraining order was approved, and Jacob Collins became legally irrelevant to her life. 2 months after the courthouse, Elena stood on a stage lit by clean white lights, wearing a tailored navy blazer and steady confidence. She had been selected, unanimously, to represent her firm at the West Coast Tech and Innovation Summit. The youngest in her department, the only woman in her cohort, and she owned that room. Her voice didn't shake, her slides were sharp, her delivery was crisp and commanding. She didn't just present a product strategy, she told a story about vision, about resilience, about navigating growth through crisis. The applause was real, earned. When the panel ended, a dozen hands reached for her business card. Executive directors, angel investors, senior engineers, people twice her age asked her for insight. And then, there was him, Liam Brooks, co-founder of a clean energy startup out of San Francisco. Polished, but not performative. No flashy smile, just a quiet presence and an attentive gaze. They spoke for 8 minutes, about market timing, cross-functional, teams, and how most pitch decks try too hard. It was light, easy, almost forgettable, until the package arrived. 3 days later, she opened her mailbox to find a hardcover book. Quiet Power, The Hidden Strength of Introverts in a Loud World. Inside the front cover was a handwritten note. Your presentation wasn't loud, but it was unforgettable. I thought you might enjoy this. No strings attached, just admiration. LB, no flowers, no pressure. No invoice, just respect. Elena smiled to herself and slipped the book onto her shelf. She didn't text him. Not yet, because this time she wasn't rushing toward anything. She was building something, and for once, it was hers alone. The first time, Liam invited Elena to meet his parents. She hesitated, not because she was afraid, but because she knew what it meant to be brought home, to be shown off not as an ornament, but as someone who matters. Their home was in Sausalito. Modest, warm, filled with sunlight and the scent of fresh thyme from the kitchen. No grand speeches, no judgmental stares. Just easy conversation, gentle questions, and smiles that didn't hide sharp intentions. Liam's mother, Karen, handed Elena a glass of iced tea and said softly, "He's never brought anyone home before. Not once." Then she leaned in, a little conspiratorially, and believe me, I've tried. They laughed together, not awkwardly, but like they'd known each other far longer than just an afternoon. At dinner, they didn't ask about weddings or babies. They asked about Elena, what she loved about her work, what kind of books she read, her favorite coffee shop in Seattle, And later, when the sun dipped low and Liam walked Elena to the garden, Jonathan found himself pulled aside by Liam's father. The man, tall, gray-templed with quiet eyes, looked him dead on and said, "Your daughter is remarkable, smart, poised, knows her own mind. I don't know what she's been through, but I can tell she came through it stronger." Jonathan just nodded, because, for the first time in a long time, someone saw Elena not as someone to shape or tame, but as someone already whole, and that made all the difference. The photo was nothing special, just a candid shot from the summit gala. Elena and Liam standing side by side, mid-conversation, her smile soft, his gaze focused. But apparently, it was enough. Because 2 days after it circulated, Jacob showed up. He was waiting just outside her office building, pacing like a man who had convinced himself this was still his story. When Elena stepped out, he didn't shout. He didn't beg. He just looked at her with that twisted smile she used to mistake for charm. "So that's it?" he said. "You replaced me that fast?" She didn't flinch. "You're violating a restraining order." "I gave you everything I had," he snapped, "and you ran to the first guy with a fancy job and a clean suit." "No," she said, voice sharp and still. "I didn't run. I walked away. And you've been chasing a ghost ever since." He took a step closer, jaw clenched, and that's when Liam appeared. He didn't shove, didn't raise his voice. He simply moved to Elena's side, posture calm, presence solid, like a wall Jacob couldn't see through. "She's no longer someone—" "You can hurt," Liam said evenly. "You had your chance, and you burned it." Jacob looked at him, then at Elena, who stood tall, eyes unblinking, and in that moment, something in him cracked. Not loud, not obvious, but real. Because for the first time he saw her as she was now, out of reach, out of his orbit, untouchable. He turned without a word and walked away from a life he was never meant to hold. The lake was quieter than she remembered. Evening light slipped across the surface like silk, casting soft gold on the ripples. Elena and I walked slowly along the gravel path, the same one we used to take when she was a little girl, back when her hands were smaller, and she still reached for mine without thinking. Neither of us said much at first. The silence wasn't heavy, just full. Then, as we reached the old bench near the water's edge, she stopped. Her eyes scanned the horizon, calm, unreadable. "I used to think love meant sacrifice," she said, her voice steady. "That if I just gave enough, proved enough, someone would stay." She glanced at me, not waiting for permission, not needing approval. "But now," she continued, "I don't want to be chosen because I bent the most. I want to be met where I already stand." I smiled, slow and proud. "Peace isn't given, Elena. You build it, brick by brick." She nodded, then turned her gaze back to the lake. The wind moved gently through her hair. For a long time, she had fought to survive someone else's chaos. Now, she was crafting her own stillness. And as we walked on, her steps firm, her shoulders light, I didn't feel the need to hold her hand, because she no longer needed me to keep her steady. She had found her balance, and she was moving forward, strong, whole, and free.